This entire situation is just wrong. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, and welcome to my video where we are going to discuss a specific card from War of the Spark that is just completely, it's all wrong. The way that they have done it, it doesn't feel the way it's supposed to feel. This card should actually be a different color. So I'm gonna lay it all out for you. We'll go over all the different issues, and then you can let me know what you guys think, if it feels the same way to you. The card we're gonna talk about, obviously, is where we need to start, and that is Lazotep Plating. Now, this card is 1 blue, 1 colorless. It's an instant, a mass 1, so put a +1/+1 counter on an army you control. If you don't control one, create a 0/0 black zombie army creature token first. And the rest of it says, you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Now, why am I saying that this card feels all wrong? Well, there are a number of layers to it. Now, let's start out with why it might kind of feel right to you. And that is because of the hexproof granting. Hexproof granting does kind of feel like a blue ability. It isn't a hexproof basically in Magic cards shows up in 3 colors mainly. You have blue, green, and white as the colors you can traditionally see hexproof in. And it's used in different ways in different colors. Now, blue doesn't have a ton of granting hexproof instants or spells like that. It does have a few. I mean, in more recent times, we have things like Mizium Skin, which is from the second Ravnica block. And for 1 blue, it's an instant that gives target creature that you control hexproof until end of turn and an extra toughness. And it's got Overload, so it's kind of similar, but not exactly the same. Dive Down is the one that you're more familiar with probably nowadays, the Ixalan one, where 1 blue, target creature you control gets +0/+3 and gains hexproof until end of turn. Now, the majority of blue hexproof cards are either the creature has hexproof or gets hexproof, and it's on an individual creature. It's not a blanket style effect. When it comes to blanket hexproof, that is actually predominantly the domain of green and to a degree white. White has it more conditionally. So it's not like this has changed in recent times either. If you look at some older cards, speaking of the green-white connection, you would think of something like Privileged Position, which admittedly is an amazing card. It's 3 hybrid white, green, and 2 colorless. Other permanents you control have hexproof, so if you put 2 of these out, everything is untouchable. And the whole flavor behind it is really nice. Like the flavor text, we in the Conclave have a saying: when you hold a shield, lend your shield. The strong must never forget what they owe to the weak. And this totally feels white-green. The artwork is just gorgeous. I really enjoy the artwork of Privileged Position, and the whole flavor of, yes, we are in a privileged position, we can protect everybody. The whole card just works beautifully, and you actually see that show up again in Asceticism, which is 2 green, 3 colorless. Creatures you control can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control, which is the old wording of hexproof. If they reprinted the card now, it would just say creatures you control have hexproof. This is the old way of doing it. And it also regenerates creatures. Asceticism is an amazing card. I'm a huge fan of playing green decks and cards that give like all your guys benefits. And this is great. Asceticism is really nice, even if it is kind of sad in a way when you know the story behind Thrun. The flavor text there is, let my ignominy, I have such a hard time with that word for some reason, build walls thicker than iron and stronger than dark steel. So it's Thrun, the last troll. He's the very last of his kind. On all of Mirrodin, he's literally the only troll left. And that's pretty sad. I mean, it's kind of weird that a card that's like got a quote from I'm the last one, but then Asceticism actually affects everybody. Basically what it does is it turns everybody into a troll from Mirrodin. It gives the same kind of abilities, because the other trolls from the original Mirrodin block, you'd have, like, you get a 3/2 troll that regenerates for 2 mana as well. So I really enjoy the flavor behind it. Asceticism blanket protecting all your guys. And you can see that also we've got a card, Heroic Intervention. This is the most recent example, and this is one of the ones that I started to think about the most when I thought of Lazotep Plating, because they have similar casting costs. They both cost 1 mana of their color and 1 colorless. So this one's a green and a colorless. And it gives permanents you control, hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, right? And that's pretty much the exact same thing as Lazotep plating, except for the fact that heroic intervention doesn't affect you. So there is that sideline, but this blankets everything. This is like, if you look at it, privileged position does everything. Heroic intervention does everything. Blue doesn't normally get this weaken hexproof everything kind of ability. Now, heroic intervention's a pretty solid card. Not only does it give hexproof to all your guys, but indestructible as well. And again, we've got that flavor of where the strong would harm the weak, I'll be there. So it's that same sort of like protective, I will stand over you and protect the weak. That's not a blue feel. Blue is a very thought-evoking mental color. So the idea of armored plating, because that's what Lazotep is. Lazotep is armor plating. So this is a blue spell that's essentially armor plating, which kind of a little bit works with the Mizium skin, but honestly, blue is more of a tricky color, not a like, we will endure kind of color. So it doesn't follow in that regard as well. So you've got this situation where the hexproof really doesn't feel like it fits, but Lazotep plating actually takes it a step further because it's a mass ability, also has multiple things that make it feel like a green ability. The first is putting a +1/+1 counter on a creature, which is something you don't see very often in blue. There's not a ton of blue cards that will specifically put a +1/+1 counter on creatures. That is mostly the domain of green, with some other colors getting a splash of it here or there for specific things. But +1/+1 counters onto creatures, pretty much the domain of green. Also, creating creature tokens. Another big green dominant sort of thing. Green is responsible for creating a whole bunch of creatures, has a ton of token making cards. Now, obviously blue does as well. There are cards that make merfolk tokens and things like that. But when you put it all together, you add in the fact that you give hexproof to everything, you can boost creatures with it, you can make creatures with it. If I was to describe a card to you, and I wasn't saying the color, and I just said for 2 mana, you can either put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, make a 1/1 token creature, or you can, and you give all your creatures hexproof until end of turn along with you. Your first thoughts wouldn't be, oh, that's got to be a blue card. It doesn't sit right in the brain. And on top of it feeling like it's not a blue card and feeling like a green card, the artwork and everything, it makes it almost feel like a black card, really. It's just, it's weird in that it feels completely out of its own flavor. This is a blue card that feels like a green and smidgen of black card to me. And every time I look at it, I go, this is a solid card. I mean, it is, I will say, it is interesting to move outside the normal bounds of what a color can do and stretch it out a bit. But one of the things that's always been an issue with blue is back in the day at the beginning of Magic, they put anything that was considered tricky into the color blue, which meant that blue had way too many abilities in the color pie. And green getting hexproof is to handle like, okay, green doesn't have a lot of answers. Blue has a ton of answers. It can counter things. It can just counter what you were going to do to target all of its creatures. So in a way, it feels like it's granting blue too much power. It feels like it's off color, off flavor for me. Now, granted, I am Grandpa Magic. I've been playing Magic for a very long time. So I don't know if your guys' opinions are going to be the same on this, because when it comes to these sort of things, it's a very personal kind of feel. But I think when you look at this, overall, this feels very much like a green card, especially compared to Heroic Intervention. They just feel really similar to me. Obviously, Heroic Intervention's pretty amazing. I mean, making your creatures indestructible is definitely better than just getting to amass one. There's no competition between the cards, but it just seems overall, when you look at all the information provided, we're dealing with a scenario where it's blue is moving outside of its realm. It's moving into somewhere that it shouldn't be, and it doesn't sit right with me. Every single time I look at the card, I go, wow, that's some decent power, but also, what are they doing here? Like, why is it this way? Now, let me know what you guys think in the comments. What I want to do now is roll the Golden Scroll, and we will talk about the newest members. The Golden Scroll, these are the people who support me on Patreon or through channel memberships. We are welcoming 2 new members, Chris Williams and the Gallagher. And I also want to let you know that I'm streaming over on D Live now. It's a new platform that I'm checking out. It was just brought to my attention recently, and we're having a lot of fun over there. So if you like hanging out with me and you want to spend more time together, I say come on over to D Live, hang out with me using the same name over there that I'm using here. You are welcome to join me. I'll miss you if you don't show up. So thanks for being here, my friends, and I shall see you guys later, or maybe I'll see you over on D Live. Thanks for being here.